It's my feel-good breakfast show.
Welcome back, you beautiful souls. Thank you so much for joining us. South Africans, I think, still celebrating a phenomenal weekend of some truly unbelievable sport. Performances right across all sporting codes, especially in the rugby department. Beating England twice in one weekend and hopefully again tonight, the baby box. Come on.
Come on.
So we obviously know the Blitzbokke as well, taking the 2018 World Sevens Championship. So much to talk about, but that's not what we're talking about right now.
Exactly. So in light of this, we want to turn the attention of our health segment this morning to a very serious reality for anyone who plays a contact sport like rugby, hockey or soccer. And I'm talking about concussions. Today we're joined by Dr. Jann Killops, who is the clinical head of the events department at the Mediclinic, and of course the Readhead, who is the medical manager for the South African Rugby Union as well.
Welcome to it. I'm looking for the red hair, buddy. Come on,
no,
man.
I get it all the time. Redhead,
We've only got one ginger on this set, okay? Sean's going to start feeling...
Readhead.
Readhead. Oh my word, you learn something new every day.
I've been called many things. So.
Readhead.
Let's just stick with Clint.
Okay.
You know, look, in rugby it's all banter, you know. Guys, thank you so much for joining us. This is such an important topic because I really do sit in the fence. I played rugby, I was not great at it, but I had some of the best moments of my life. My friends are still connected to that. It gave me so much. So I don't want to deny my baby boy that opportunity, but I also got some pretty serious injuries along the way. So I think let's start with the practicalities of it. What is a concussion? What is actually happening and how do we recognize it on a sporting field? Okay, hang on it. Alarm bells, this is a concussion. Maybe, Doc, I can put that to you.
So, firstly, concussion is not a minor injury. Concussion is actually a traumatic brain injury. It happens at a cellular level in the brain, and it needs to be taken seriously. So, there are ways to recognize it, obviously, on the field, but it's also the more subtle things about concussion that we need to educate people about.
So if you were to have a concussion on the field, what is the first signs you need to look out for? Because I wouldn't know. Yeah. I would not have an idea.
And the worst thing is, as a rugby player, you don't want to go off that field.
Exactly.
So you're like, no, I'm fine.
Yeah.
3,
Meanwhile...
4-3, and your mate's behind the doctor going...
And the parents also don't want the children off the field. So concussion is everybody's problem, you know. So the obvious signs of concussion are when you're a little bit dazed, if you're unsteady on your feet, if you're a bit confused, you've got a headache, you know, players going this way, the players walking that way. Those are the obvious things. But the more subtle things are feeling in a fog, feeling irritable, you know, not feeling quite right. And those are quite difficult things sometimes for players to admit.
Sure.
I think for this reason, it's important that the players are brought into that fold, that they don't feel like the medical discussion is happening there and the players happening here. Players need to know themselves, look after themselves and their teammates. Often as a captain, I'd be the guy saying, no, dude, get off.
Yeah.
You need that. Why is this such a strong focus for you as a union? Why do you make this pretty much the first pillar of how you approach the game, Clint?
Well, you heard Jan, Graham, and you brought it up just now. It's very topical at the moment. And it's an injury that could threaten the existence of the sport.
Yeah.
But if we educate our coaches, referees, players, all rugby stakeholders, parents, you know, administrators, if we educate everyone about concussion, we teach you how to prevent concussion, and that's coaching techniques, strengthening exercises that players can do. But more importantly, if we teach all stakeholders how to recognize a concussion. And the first and foremost is when you see that, you suspect it. So you don't even diagnose, you suspect the concussion. Get the player off. Yeah. When in doubt, sit him out. You know, pull him off, and don't get emotional about it. You know, parents get emotional, coaches get emotional. They're caught up in the heat of the moment. Remove that emotion. It's the player's health and well-being. Get him off the field and get them to see a doctor. Yeah. So that's why it's so important. And it's not important just to SA Rugby. It's important to World Rugby. And we've done a lot to ensure that we are on the forefoot to try and actually prevent these injuries. And we got a rugby safety program called BoxSmart. It's regulated. Yeah, every coach and referee in the country has to do it every 2 years. We're bringing you up to speed with all the latest research and all the coaching techniques to prevent these injuries. And we make sure that our coaches and referees are up to speed with what's going on. So we really try and do a lot of work.
Incidentally, I've had worse injuries playing soccer because I'm that bad at playing football. We're going to continue this discussion. We'd love to hear from you as well. If you've got any questions or any comments that you'd like to weigh in, 021 430 9881. We are talking concussion in school sports.
It's my feel-good breakfast show.
So we're continuing our discussion about concussion in school sports, specifically, obviously focusing on rugby, but right across the board. Loving my panel, having an absolute blast getting to know them and plugging into their incredible knowledge base in this area. Dr. Jann Killops and, of course, Clint Readhead. I'm glad I got that right. So, Clint, we're going to go back to you because I think we forget that within the SA Rugby, there is the opportunity to borrow from what's happening on the highest level, and it really is all about player management. You said something that caught my attention. It's not about getting players off the field. It's about keeping players on the field. Explain that a bit further.
Okay, well, obviously we want players to have as long a career as possible. But in order to have those long careers, we need to make sure that when you do suffer an injury, whether that be an ankle injury or the concussions we're talking about, we need to remove those players from the field, diagnose the problem properly, and then have them have the correct management. And by doing so, we make sure that they recover from the injury properly, and then get back to play. And they've now got a limited risk of getting re-injured because they've recovered properly, and therefore their careers are extended. So that's really what I'm sort of referring to when I say keeping them on the field.
And it's always been like that. This isn't something new.
No,
We've always had that focus. What are some of those scenarios? What actually happens when concussion occurs, and how does it most often happen in a sporting scenario?
So, you know, in terms of the mechanism, usually it can be a bump to the head, or sometimes it can just be the momentum of somebody hitting you from behind, because your brain is in like a fluid substance inside your skull, so it moves forwards and backwards within the skull. So it's the damage that happens at a cellular level. So that's the typical kind of injury.
When you deal with these sports injuries
Yes.
in that environment, once they move off the field into that, what is the most common cause of concussion when it comes to school sports that you've encountered, do you think?
Well, in rugby, it's the tackling, really.
Definitely the tackle in rugby.
Yeah.
But you know,
It's
hockey,
in cycling.
they run into each other, the hockey stick, the hockey ball.
Yeah.
You know, people forget about that, you know, those sports. And then soccer, just your head ring, clashing of the heads, you know, goalkeeper diving into somebody's knee, you know, so they, in anywhere where you could potentially
You're
get
running
a bang
into
to
the
the
back
head,
of one of my players while I'm looking at an up and under.
Exactly.
And not to forget sports
But-
like cycling and horse riding. Those are
Yeah.
also common causes of concussion.
But if you do go back to rugby, it's the tackle.
The tackle, and that's where the training comes in, obviously,
Very much
is
so.
most important. One thing I've gotten really used to is being sent off the field to go and to meet the emergency services on the side of the field, and we've got some fantastic emergency services. Is it a legal requirement? Is there always going to be someone on standby when we look at these school sports fixtures? What's the law when it comes to that?
So I can talk a little bit around that regarding rugby, because rugby, we've got certain regulations and guidelines in place. And what we say we've divided sort of rugby into your green category, gold category, and which just indicates the level of care you've got to have at a rugby field. Now we've got to be cognizant of the fact that, you know, rugby's played in over many different areas in our country with lots of different resources. So the minimum at a schoolboy game is that you've got to have a first aider there with your spinal board, head blocks, collar, and spider harness. But more importantly, Graham, and this is what I want to emphasize, is that every school and club should have an emergency action plan. So that you know, should you have a serious injury, what are we going to do and who are we going to call? And with rugby, if I can punt this, with serious catastrophic injuries, we've got the Boxmart spine line number, which is powered by ER24, and that's 0800 678 678. And you know, if you got a serious catastrophic injury or serious head injury, if you phone that number, you'll get advice from the call center, and if necessary, they'll dispatch an ambulance, which will fetch you and take you to the nearest applicable hospital.
And that's for anybody.
That's for anybody
Yeah.
playing
In any
rugby.
school sport.
Insured or not insured.
But to go back to your original point, yes, we do say there has to be a first aider at every game, and you need to have the minimum of a head block, spinal board.
I think just reinforces that the onus really is on the coaching and on the school staff to make sure that they are prepared for this. I want to find out about repeat injuries in our next segment. 021 430 9881. We'd love to hear from a rugby coach. Are you a coach in any school sporting code? We'd love to connect with you.
It's my feel-good breakfast show.
Welcome back. We're wrapping up a discussion around concussions in school sport, obviously focusing on rugby, but any sporting code has the opportunity for these concussions to occur. Doctor, thank you so much for joining us. Clint, great to have you here. I think we're going to have to make this a regular thing because there are so many questions, but I think most importantly, let's look at recovery quickly to wrap this up. How long do you need to recover from a concussion? Obviously, there are varying degrees of severity, but and what other things are involved there? Because it's not just sport that you want to get, you've got to go back to real life.
Absolutely. So in children, that's 18 and under, there's a mandatory 2-week stand-down period before they can have a graded return to sport, and Clint can talk about that in a minute. But it's very important to talk about return to learning, and you have to be able to function cognitively, so thinking, working, concentrating before you can return to sport. So we need to engage doctors and teachers so that the children are supported during the times when their brains are struggling to recover, because if they don't have time to recover, it takes them longer.
No offense, but I can speak from past experience. There's nothing dumber than a teenage boy, and a concussed teenage boy even worse. But it's all about the gees. We love it. We love our mates in that. We want to be a part of that team. We don't want to miss out on these incredible milestones, these memories. But it is so important to manage that. If you can just, in an overview, how do we connect with you, and any final words before we let you guys go?
Just very quickly, just to also follow on what Jann said, rugby's got rules. If you suffer a concussion, you're under the age of 18, it's a minimum stand-down period of 2 weeks, and then you go into a formalised graduate return to play. So if you've seen your doctor who's cleared you to play, it can be up to, you can get back to rugby sign and symptom-free within 19 days. So just keep that in mind for kids 18 years and younger. To connect with us, please visit our website, www.boxsmart.com. Go to the concussion tab. All the information you need to know is there. It's all freely available. And we'll encourage you to go and visit it. Also, our YouTube site, Boxsmart SA, that's the YouTube site. All these clips, tackle techniques, coaching techniques, they're all there. It's freely available. Please interact with us, link with us.
Thank you so much, Doctor, for all of your efforts on and off the field. I can tell you, again, from my own experience, there's nothing worse than a bad tackle, but there is nothing sweeter than a good tackle. So do it properly. Most importantly, look after yourselves. Look after your teammates, guys. If you notice something wrong with one of your teammates on or off the field, even days after, make sure that you talk to your coach, speak to a teacher, speak to your parents. It's all about being aware and doing it properly. Guys, thank you so much. What an absolute pleasure.
Thank you very much. Thank you.